it's really a sideways idea when you say that children will raise themselves, especially with education being what it is.
Yes.
And a lot of people will be like, but education is free.
What's the quality of the free education?
Yeah.
So when someone says, oh, but they have schools that offer free education, I'm like, have you seen the quality of education they offer there?
So if you really want to really empower your children,
You have to
be
coach
intentional about the kind of education you give them.
And that's not cheap.
Look around you, all the big money bags in town. They don't send their children to the same schools or
That
to
the
any of
average man
the
sends
any of the
his
schools that
kids.
are free. Why? Why do you
Because
think they do that?
They know the
Because
truth.
they know the quality is abysmal in those schools.
And that's not what can empower a child to compete with the big leagues.
Now, we're not saying that sometimes a child who is really particular and
Yeah.
gifted cannot rise from the struggles, from the low ebbs of their circumstance and shine.
What's it
But
called?
imagine
Proper
what
story.
Imagine what it would be for that child who's gifted and who struggles through the slow paces of what life has given. Imagine that they were given something better to work with.
I can't remember where this conversation happened, but the parents were really struggling to pay for their kids' tuition. And somebody was like, oh, they're so trying to prove that they can afford this. But the man said that it's not a status statement, that he's breaking his back because he knows that that school will open doors for his child.
It's like a network thing.
Yes.
The school has produced great personalities in the country, and when you come out from that school, you're able to connect.
Yeah, because of the relationship you've built there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really about trying to prove that
Prove
he
a
could
point.
afford,
Yeah.
because it's breaking his back to literally pay for that school. But he feels like that's the extra mile he's willing to go to set his kids up. Because
Empowerment.
one, he cannot compete with the fathers
Yeah.
of these kids.
And he wants his
He
children
wants
to be able to compete with the children of these men.
And for that to happen, he needs to put his kids in the same space, empower his kids with the same abilities. So by the relationship that they have with these kids, they can easily get introduced
to opportunities
through
that will
these
change
people's
their
kids.
lives.
Yes.
That's a strategy of a parent who actually thinks. So to be able to set this strategy in motion, you have to sit down and make a plan. It's not about popping children all over the place. It's about having the children that you can enable, put them in a space where their futures will be bright, not just for them, but for their societies.
Yeah. If I'm to really say this and be honest, sometimes you find the rich, those who are able to cater for more than a dozen of kids, having about 4.
3, actually. 2,
Yeah.
3. The whole idea is that you don't have to pressure people just because your reality is different, just because your thinking is different. There are a lot of people out there who have an entirely different vision for themselves, an entirely different plan than what you have for your life for themselves. And it's okay for you to be different, to think differently. But you have to also recognize and acknowledge that it's okay for them to also have a different view on life and make a different decision for how they want their lives to turn out than what you think.
Exactly.
And when we talk about culture pressuring people into doing stuff, we feel disengaged from that and it sounds very abstract. But who makes up the culture? It's you and I. So when we say that culture belittles women, when we say that culture does that culture does this to widows, for instance, people tend to look at culture like a monster that is hanging above all of our heads, and it's some abstract thing. But who is culture? Culture is the way you and I live, the way we behave, the way we interact with one another, the way we treat one another. That makes up the bulk of our way of life.
So when we talk about culture, we're talking about you and I.
That's right.
The way we live.
So there is always that pressure on newlyweds to have children immediately. And sometimes, because of that pressure, newlyweds feel like they have a point to prove.
Yes.
Or an
It's no longer
obligation
yes,
to fulfill.